Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today, we're going to talk about Kenny Omega, who went on his Twitch channel and actually talked about how he believes in fighting and what he did during Brawl Out. And I think this was very illuminating in terms of Kenny Omega being a guy who's been seen as being very soft, because he speaks very softly. But when I listen to him as he played video games, talk about the Brawl Out situation and his belief that fighting can sometimes be the answer, I found that I actually kind of respect it after hearing what he said. So let's get into it. It's about a 4-minute clip, and we're just going to let it play a little bit, and then we're going to stop and discuss what he's saying.
I thought my duty as an EVP during Brawl Out would be to enter the situation while there was chaos, de-escalate it, and create a peaceful environment for everyone.
So that's a common sense position. Most jobs have a de-escalation training for, various staff members. I know my place of employment leans very heavily on de-escalation, which is trying to notice that things are getting out of control. These things might be giving somebody space, giving them an opportunity to throw things or yell or scream or whatever, so it wouldn't get physical. In the Brawl Out situation, no matter what story you may have heard, giving CM Punk some space may have actually helped matters. When he's in an enclosed space, like a locker room, for instance, and other people are crowded in that room, that's not good. It's not good. An enclosed space can be good because, you can control the environment, meaning objects that might be thrown or people that might be injured or people coming in and leaving. You can't control, it's hard to control a hallway, let's say. It's easier to control the room. But it's also creates its own scenario because then the guy feels like he's in an enclosed space and you're crowding him. So what Kenny Omega is saying here is not that difficult, but you do have to take into account what he's saying and how that could affect the psychology of people in these scenarios.
I was able to create a peaceful environment for the most important person in that altercation, and that was Larry. And I swear to God, honestly, that was my biggest, and it sounds funny, but I look at animals and our pets as people, and as, Bobby, of course, one of the most important people in my life. So to get little Larry out of there was the most important thing to me, and that was a success. Unfortunately, try as I may, things were too chaotic for me to be able to do anything by my own power.
I disagree with the idea that your pets are people. I'm not really a pet guy, but I do think that small animals can complicate matters, especially if people are getting agitated. Yeah, pets can really mess things up. They start to barking and, the natural instincts of animals to protect their owners and then getting away and all that kind of stuff. So I see what he's saying here, but I'm kind of hard-hearted when it comes to pets.
That was a moment when I had seen that there were... Good call. I believe it was in that instance when I realized that the way that I wanted to go about things wasn't necessarily the way that other people wanted to. It was also the way that other people necessarily didn't want to. And then it was also maybe not the way that the boss wanted to take care of it. And I also thought of myself as a liability because I don't want to say old school. I'm not old school. I've just played a lot of contact sports and I've gotten into jiu-jitsu and boxing and mixed martial arts. I just know that sometimes when you perform or when you fight, when everything's on the line, when you give your heart, when you give your soul towards something, and you're in that moment of high stress or high anxiety, where you've maybe emptied the tank and you're just physically exhausted. That was actually very impressive. A good punish. Yeah. When in an environment like that, sometimes emotions get the best of you and people will want to throw hands. And in the case, and I'm unfortunately or fortunately a believer of it, I think if it's decided that, hey, this is the best way to solve things and you can shake hands after and move on after, I'm a believer. I'm actually a believer of fighting.
I agree. I agree. People don't understand that, man. It's not about being aggressive. It's not about being a badass. It's just sometimes you got to do what you got to do. It's just that simple, you know. All boys, men especially, and some girls. I know that you see these fight videos are becoming more girls than boys now, but people have to get comfortable with aggression, and they have to get comfortable with fighting. You know, sometimes it's just necessary. And I know that so many of you guys, because I know it started during my generation, the no contact stuff, where in school, if you retaliated to being bullied, you also got suspended. You know, that started coming up, I think, the generation after me. And but I grew up with, sometimes you were playing basketball, somebody give you a hard foul, y'all might throw hands for a couple of seconds. Y'all were playing football and you felt like somebody was trying to intentionally hurt you and you got in his face. Maybe you guys got into a bit of a hockey fight. Somebody watched it happen for a little bit and separated you. You know, these things do not have to be life or death. You know, it's just in this moment, in this time, this is what needs to happen. This is the best way to settle it, at least for now. You know, I realize that the street element has become a lot more dangerous. There's a belief that, people are going to get killed and all this kind of stuff, which is, the threat is always there when it comes to fights of any kind, which is why you have to have responsible people who are there, who care about both parties. Even if they aren't going to stand there and say, guys, don't fight. They may just say, go ahead. And then they jump in once it starts looking bad, and that's it, and I agree with him. I agree with him. Sometimes you got to fight, man. It just is what it is. And as an adult, you learn more skills. You learn more rhetorical and other kinds of psychological skills where you can avoid fighting, and fighting has a much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Permanent consequence from adulthood. You can lose your teeth, and your teeth are not growing back. You could be seriously injured. These things can happen. But sometimes, man, a fight is what it is, and you just have to let it be.
I am, and that sounds terrible to say, and which is why, don't make me an EVP in 2024. You can't do that stuff anymore. I just feel that sometimes that's how you have to settle things.
His comment about don't make me an EVP because he believes in fighting, I actually agree with that too. I agree with that one too. The one thing is, the people who are supposed to be the bosses, those people can't just, screw it, I'm gonna throw hands with the rank and file. You know what I'm saying? I can't do that. You can't throw hands with the janitor or whatever while you wearing a suit. You out here in your casual pants, and y'all up here. You can't do that. And while CM Punk wasn't exactly a rank and file, one of the boys kinds of situations, because he had a second contract. They haven't gone into any detail about what it was, but he wasn't an executive, but he was higher than the boys were, in terms of, he wasn't just one of the guys. He was part of the office, probably a lower part of the office, but he was part of the office. And that being said, fights between those kinds of people are not really the best. And you can't have somebody who says, well, just let them bang it out. That guy can't be the executive vice president. He can't. Because in your official position, you can't be like, my official policy is let them box. No, because then you have all kind of insurance issues and all kinds of, labor issues and all this kind of stuff that might pop up. So you can't do that. So he's right about one thing. He certainly shouldn't be an EVP if he's okay with guys fighting.
Times. And I don't mean you have to settle it and then it has to be shown on screen to everyone, or people have to brag online about who won, who lost. No, it's not for that purpose. It's for the purpose of just getting that stuff out that you need to get out. And I'll admit there were a number of times, even now with me, where I thought that might have been the most appropriate answer. It never came to that. We were able to talk things out, and we became better friends, and there was a level of respect at that point on between myself and these other parties. And maybe I'll share these stories later. It's but I always, it's crazy. As much as I believe in cooler heads prevailing, sitting down and talking, sometimes it was just like, hey, I can't even think straight until I start throwing some hay, or maybe that I need to be smacked around a little bit, whatever the case might be. I think if it's a contained scenario, and if it's not a situation where it's, there's pulling people's eyeballs out, low blows, hair pulling, or scratching, you know what I mean? If it's just like, hey, let's just hang and bang a little bit. I can see it sometimes being conducive for a positive work environment. Again, this is exactly why I have no power, nor should I. So that's just how I feel. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
So this is the argument where they should have worked together. That's low key what he's saying here is, in a situation where you're in a tense scenario in pro wrestling, you can work out your aggression because you can go in there, be professional, agree that somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose the match. But during the match, you can work a little bit more stiff. You can tighten up the punches a little bit more. You can get out some of the aggression and you can move past it. When you shut down that avenue, the avenue of perhaps working together, perhaps utilizing that aggression and working it out in the ring. When you shut down that avenue and you're getting a bunch of lawyers involved, and this is both sides, by the way. It's not just, Punk wanted to work with them and they didn't want to work with him. It's both sides getting lawyers involved. Because at that level, with that amount of money involved and these egos, these guys were just, they weren't thinking, all right? They were trying to protect their investment, which is themselves. And, it would have been more conducive to them having the match, a couple of matches where they could work it out and then respect each other afterwards. Because you can respect each other after a match, a physical contest where the two of you got an opportunity to throw punches at each other, throw strikes at each other, hit each other in a contained environment, like what Kenny Omega is saying. And it's just like when I used to go to Sunday school. You would get into it with a boy, the youth pastor or whatever, break out the boxing gloves and just make a circle and handle it right here, and that it's over afterwards. And that's just kind of how it is, So I agree with Kenny Omega, him saying that he shouldn't have any authority. He has none and all this kind of stuff. I don't know how true all that is, but listening to him talk about it, I can sign off on what he's saying. As somebody who played contact sports, as somebody who's, been in these kinds of situations, quite often you hold a grudge longer because you couldn't do something than if you actually did. You know, and I think that's part of the reason why all of this stuff still goes on, is because these guys never got out of their system. You know, there was so much of this, let's squash it, let's get the lawyers involved, let's get, NDAs signed, so everybody's got to shut up, and nobody can touch each other, nobody's going to work together, everybody's going to be kept apart. That's one way of dealing with things. Another thing is just do it, get it out of the way, and move on, which probably is better, because at least you have an opportunity to relieve the stress that's within you, rather than your version of releasing stress is to whisper to wrestling journalists about how, the other person is a horrible, scary, bad guy and you're the good guy or whatever. That's just trash. But what do you guys think? Should Kenny Omega be an EVP with his belief in fighting? Because you just can't believe that. You can't buy into that one. But what do you guys think about this? Let me know, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Tell me what's worse than learning all that you led to believe was all horse crap. They distort so question.